Scotland's only Labour MP, Ian Murray, is in our Edinburgh studio this morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Now, you said in your speech to the Labour Party, the Scottish Labour Party conference a couple of weeks ago, that the SNP has absolutely no mandate for another independence referendum. Given it says in black and white in their manifesto that they have, what were you talking about?
Well, it's quite clear that in 2014, 85% of the Scottish population voted in the independence referendum and 55% voted to remain as part of the United Kingdom. What it said in the SNP manifesto is that they would ask for the power to call another referendum should there be material change in circumstances, and this is what this debate is all about. It's about how the UK manages itself in a constitutional sense post-Brexit, and that's what Carbon Jones has just said. We have to deal with the English question.
Yes,
it's right for Carbon and Kes to be pushing that particular agenda
even from how
forward.
you've just described the SNP manifesto, they clearly do have a mandate.
Well, they're actually going to ask on Wednesday or Tuesday, when the vote in the Scottish Parliament comes up, for there to get the powers to call a second independence referendum. I think we should be taking this off the table. I don't think the Scottish people want it at the moment, and all the polls have shown consistently that Scottish people don't want it. And I think the way that Kezia Dugdale, Carbon Jones, Sadiq Khan, many people are coming together in Cardiff this week is about trying to find a better way in a post-Brexit
I understand that you don't want another
Britain.
referendum, and I understand you think it doesn't address the main issues. But the point I'm getting at is that you know, we operate in politics with the idea that if parties say things in their manifestos and then get elected, they have a mandate to do that, and you seem to be questioning that about the SNP.
Well, if it's about people going with their manifesto commitments, then the Greens will surely not support the SNP on Tuesday when it comes to the vote in the Scottish Parliament, because they had a whole plethora of things in their manifesto that would trigger a second independence referendum, one being 1 million signatures, and it's quite clear that that's not the case. There is no mandate to bring forward another independence referendum when we've already had 85% voting just a few years ago in what was classed as a once-in-a-generation, even once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Scotland to have independence, and we shouldn't be bringing that uncertainty back to the Scottish economy. That's what's important in all these discussions.
Should the Scottish Parliament vote on Tuesday for another referendum or for a Section 30 order, does that mean there's a mandate for another referendum?
Well, that depends on what you look at in terms of the Scottish Parliament's mandate. The Scottish Parliament will have voted, but indeed the Scottish Parliament has voted in the last year against fracking, against the SNP's management of education, against cuts in the National Health Service, and the First Minister's completely ignored those. So it seems to me that on the 6 occasions that the government has been defeated in the Scottish Parliament, the First Minister's ignored. The mandate in terms of the Scottish Parliament is only suitable when it suits. But the key thing here is that if the Scottish Parliament does pass this on Tuesday, and we've said this consistently, Westminster shouldn't be blocking another referendum in Scotland, but the timing of that and when it should happen is the key component.
Jeremy Corbyn was interviewed by Robert Peston this morning, and he said of the timing that it couldn't be worse, and rather implied that his position seemed very similar to Theresa May's, which was, I'm not ruling out a referendum. It shouldn't be blocked entirely by Westminster, but you're not having one now. Presumably on this issue, you and Jeremy Corbyn would agree with each other.
Well, our position is exactly the same as the vast majority of the Scottish people who don't want another Scottish independence referendum. But what we're also saying is, if Brexit is going to bring uncertainty to the country, which it undoubtedly will, and all the studies have shown that it will bring uncertainty in terms of the economy and in terms of the way that a post-Brexit Britain looks, we shouldn't be compounding that uncertainty with another independence referendum. It's been quite clear from the Fraser of Allender Institute last week that that would be disastrous for the Scottish economy, and we shouldn't be bringing forward something that would be detrimental to people's livelihoods and jobs.
If there is another referendum at some point, what do you think should be on the paper? There was some talk, wasn't there, at your conference, that perhaps your idea of a federal UK or some variant of it should be on the ballot paper.
Well, actually, the discussions are much more nuanced than that in terms of where we currently are in this particular process. You know, we're going to have this week in Wales, we're going to have Carbon Jones, Kezia Dugdale, we're going to have Gordon Brown, we're going to have the Shadow Welsh Secretary Christina Rees, we're going to have Andy Burnham, who's standing for the Mayoralty in Manchester, Steve Rotherham in Merseyside, and a whole host of people across England looking at what we should be planning in terms of the constitutional settlement in a post-Brexit Britain. That's an incredibly important step forward, because breaking up the United Kingdom is not in the best interest of either the United Kingdom or indeed Scotland. So we need another formulation that takes us forward of what a post-Brexit Britain looks like. And I think this is a very exciting way of doing it. It's great that Kezia Dugdale has brought this forward. It's great that everyone else has bought into it. But now we need to get on with the process of developing what that means. And of course letting the people into that process as well, which is very important.
I come back to the point. Would you support having that, what you've just described, whatever comes out of it, as an option if there's another independence referendum at some point?
It's too early to say in all of those particular issues. This is a process that will run through over a fairly medium to long-term period of time, because it's about having a People's Convention, letting the people into this process to look at how they want a post-Brexit Britain to be governed. It's not just about where power lies. It can look at what the House of Lords looks like. It could look at the voting system.
I understand.
It's about having a very clear way of bringing forward a post-Brexit Britain. This isn't just a Scottish issue. This is what's also important. This is about dealing with 85% of the country, which is England, and also making sure that Scottish devolution, Welsh and Northern Irish, and a post-Brexit Britain works for the people of Scotland.
I understand that.
Wales.
My point is, should there, at some point, as Parliament will decide on Tuesday, be another referendum, it needn't necessarily be, do you want independence or not?
Well, it's far, far too early to have that kind of discussion. I'm not even sure whether or not those Section 30 discussions will include any other option other than a yes, no or a remain, leave in terms of another independence referendum. I think what we need to do is be concentrating on what we can offer the Scottish people in terms, and indeed the English, Welsh, Northern Irish people in terms of what a post-Brexit Britain looks like. That's what this discussion's about, and people coming together in Wales next week, I think, is a fundamental transformation of the way the UK works, of people coming together, discussing what is best in the interests of the regions and nations of the United Kingdom, and making sure that a post-Brexit Britain works for everyone in the four nations that work together as a family.
If what you've just described to us is to be credible as an alternative to the SNP's proposals, there has to be some credible prospect of a Labour government coming along to implement it, whether it be in Westminster or in Edinburgh or both. You seem so disunited at the moment. I mean, again, when Jeremy Corbyn was here a couple of weeks ago, and it took him a few days to get the line right on your attitude to a referendum, you tweeted, and you didn't just tweet, can I remind you what Scottish Labour's position is? You tweeted saying, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to be reminded why I won't join Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet, he's just given a good example. He is destroying the Labour Party. Now, how can anyone listening, watching this, take seriously your idea that Labour's going to deliver a federal Britain when you can't even be civil to your own party leader when he's addressing your own party conference?
Well, I think you've got to look at what's happening next week. The entire Labour family is coming together. The Shadow Welsh Secretary who sits in the Shadow Cabinet at the UK level, Kezia Dugdale, Carbon Jones, the First Minister, the mayoralty candidates who are going to be taking a significant amount of devolved power. The whole Labour family is coming together under the auspice of looking at what the post-Brexit Britain looks like in terms of federalism, and we're all united on that. Jeremy Corbyn has clarified his position with regards to what he said in Glasgow.
You said he was destroying the Labour Party. Is he destroying the Labour Party?
We're all now on exactly the same page. I've always said, and I've consistently said, Gordon, on your show and many others, that the public decide who are leaders of political parties, because they decide at elections and at the ballot box. And Jeremy Corbyn's personal approval ratings are not particularly positive at the moment, and that Jeremy has to come forward with a strategy, along with his colleagues in the Parliamentary Labour Party, to turn that around. I'm looking forward to that strategy coming forward, of which these discussions about a federal post-Brexit Britain are part of that whole strategy, because it's an exciting time to be looking at what the English regions can get in terms of power, and indeed the nations, the four nations of the United Kingdom.
This is the basic problem you have, I'm afraid. Saying as you're saying now, I would encourage Jeremy Corbyn to come up with a strategy, is not at all the same thing as saying, as you said at the time he was in Scotland addressing your conference, this man is destroying the Labour Party.
Well, he got it wrong, didn't he? And he's clarifying his position. We're all now on exactly the same page in terms of where we are for our attitude to a second independence referendum. And I just can't understand why we can't get onto a conversation about how positive this federal agenda could possibly be. The entire Labour family is coming together. It's unprecedented next week in Cardiff to be able to look at what we'll look at the terms of the constitutional settlement across the whole of the United Kingdom. Post-Brexit, that's the entire Labour family coming together with a very positive strategy for the future that Jeremy's driving forward, with John Trickett and Christina Rees from the Shadow Cabinet being represented there next week, and that's a positive, unifying thing that we can all take forward with great enthusiasm. And I'm delighted that Jeremy's backed it.
This sounds absolutely wonderful. I assume you will now agree, if asked, to become Shadow Secretary for Scotland.
Well, I haven't been asked, and I've said that consistently.
And what would your answer be?
As well, I would have to have a long conversation with Jeremy Corbyn
would you
about
consider
what would happen in the future. Of course I would consider it. I've never ruled that out, but it's important to be looking at some of the big issues, and I'm involved in this process in terms of federalism. I opened the debate at Scottish Labour Party conference. I've been working very closely with Carwyn Jones and with Gordon Brown and with John Prescott and taking some of this forward with Kezia Dugdale. So we're all involved in this particular process, and these semantics really, in terms of where we go in a post-Brexit Britain, are minor to the fact that we've got a really exciting opportunity to look at what post-Brexit Britain looks like.
We'll have to leave it there. Ian Murray, thanks for joining us.